Hi there, and welcome back. My name is Jennifer O'Sullivan with Studio B. Today, I'm going to share with you some breathing practices coupled with meditation that will help you to feel more grounded and centered. Basically, a little more regulated and organized on the inside. So what I'm going to share with you today is what's called hara breathing. And these practices come from many of the Eastern wisdom traditions. Anybody who's practiced yoga will be familiar with belly breathing. We find that people in ancient China, particularly the Taoists, also practice a belly awareness meditation. And in Japan, this is also really popular. So scientifically, we've discovered that when you breathe into the belly, there are several things that take place. What many meditators have been saying all along and is being shown in the research is that bringing your internal awareness down into the belly, or here at the hara, is very, very centering and grounding, but in particular, it pulls mental congestion out of the head and diffuses it down into the body. So we feel less stuffed and pressurized up in the head. And so there's this sense of calm that drops down into the system. We also are seeing from research that's coming from the neuroscience community that when we are able to breathe and maintain a presence in the lower belly here at the hara, that it triggers an aspect of our nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. So you might be familiar with the fight or flight response. That's the sympathetic nervous system. But what we commonly call the rest and digest is an aspect of our automatic nervous system, or autonomic, that's a lot to say, autonomic nervous system, that part of our nervous system that we don't really have any control over. The rest and digest is responsible for bringing back equilibrium within all the different physiological systems in the body. It helps to regulate the endocrine system, our digestion, our fertility, our heart and lungs, and so forth. And one of the ways that we can trigger rest and digest is doing very relaxing, calming things. Take a nap, a nice walk, get out and garden. Those things have all been proven to settle the nervous system. We can also do it in the moment by breathing deeply with an awareness on the lower abdomen here at the hara. Okay, so that's really important for us to be able to do, because any kind of minor or major stressor typically kicks off that fight or flight response. And over time, we unlearn how to come out of that state. And this has kicked off a whole lot of physiological health conditions and disorders. So we want to be able to rest on demand, as I like to call it. Altogether, this means that internally, when we can center ourselves down into the belly, we're going to feel more grounded and able to meet challenges as they come. Because when we're congested up here in the upper body, difficulty comes at us, we're a little bit too wound up to really step back and see the bigger picture and get the lay of the land and be more appropriately responsive to crises or situations that arise. The other thing that happens that other people also notice when we are more grounded and centered down here. In fact, in Japan, where the word hara comes from, it's said that people who have hara presence or belly-based consciousness are more trustworthy. That if you go into a business meeting and you're about to make a big deal with somebody, a big investment or work project, if you've got people who seem very up here in their head, then the other people in the room are going to be less likely to trust that person. So maybe you've seen in the movies the very classic Japanese businessman who barely says anything and just sits back and watches and is very quiet and taking things in. So that's almost a stereotype of what it means to have hara presence. This is also a place in various martial arts traditions that you want to reside in more. Our power is said to come from here. So when we can move from the belly, we tend to be more solid, physically able to stand our ground, but also to marshal more energy when we need it. So we want to have a hara-based consciousness when we're exercising too. But today we're going to focus on relaxation, okay? So I want you to first start by getting comfortable wherever you are. If you're sitting, that's great. If you are standing, that's also a possibility. And just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're upright and that your spine is elongated, yeah? Okay. If you like, you can close your eyes. We're just going to take a single deep breath, and I want you on the inhale to fill up nice and full. And imagine your energy is right here at this forehead. And on your exhale, as the air streams out of your nose, feel your awareness slowly drop down past the head, the throat, and down into the lower abdomen at the hara. Let's do that one more time when I'm talking a little bit less. So take a deep breath in, energy and internal awareness focus on the forehead. And then when you slowly release that out, let your attention drop down and into the lower abdomen. Stay down here in the belly for a moment or two, breathing normally. And notice what that's like and how that may have shifted your internal environment. Even just 2 breaths can make a huge difference. But today I'm going to take you through a couple of possibilities for marshaling this belly-based presence, okay? So first of all, I want to talk to you a little bit more about posture. You'll see here that I am sitting cross-legged. This is something that I have the hip structure for. Not everybody can sit with their knees down like this. A lot of times you might see people sitting up like this. So if this is you, then sitting close to the floor like I am or directly on the floor is not a great option. So you want to place a cushion underneath your hips so that you end up having, your knees aren't going to go down to the ground, but you're going to have a forward tilt of the pelvis that makes them drop a little closer and enable your spine to sit up straighter. When our knees are up and we're rocking back into the tailbone, you kind of feel that pressure on your tailbone, then we can't take good deep breaths because the spine has now rounded. So we want to elevate the hips so that the knees can drop a little bit, pelvis tips forward, and the rest of the spine will line up as needed. And this will enable the lungs to inflate fully in all 3 directions. Then we have an opportunity as well to lie down and practice meditation, which is what I'm going to show you today. And I would encourage you to go ahead and get comfortable lying down on your back. I'm going to use my meditation zabuton. This is a mat that I'm going to use as a support for my head. Go ahead and lie down. Rest your head right here on the cushion. And instead of straightening out your knees, just leave your legs bent, put your feet on the floor, and then tilt your pelvis under a little bit. And then you can bring your hands to your lower belly. And you can feel your breath expand into the belly as you breathe in. And then your hands drop back down as you breathe out. The reason why it's easier to breathe deeply this way is because when we're sitting up or standing up, the torso muscles need to engage in order to keep us from falling over. There's always a little bit of muscle activation when we're upright to hold us up against gravity. But when we're lying flat and we have the support of the ground or the floor beneath us, then we can really soften and relax all those muscles in the body. So settle into this nice deep breathing here in the belly. I'm going to go ahead and sit up because it's a little easier for my voice to project when I'm sitting upright, but you stay where you are. And I'll guide you through this mindful breathing meditation. You've got your hands on your belly. And for first few rounds of breath, start to breathe deeply in and out through the abdomen. In fact, lengthen out the breaths a little bit so that they're longer than your normal breath. The count is up to you, so maybe it's 4 counts in and 4 counts out. And try to keep your internal gaze emanating from the lower belly outward from there. Okay, so it's not like we're up in the head watching down below, but we're actually down here in the belly looking outward. And just establish this nice, beautiful in and out rhythm. Belly expands, the hands will lift and separate a little bit on the inhale and come back together and drop back down on the exhale. And this practice comes from the Taoist tradition, where they refer to the lower belly as the lower dantian, which is a similar to Japanese culture, is a very auspicious place where energy gathers in a pulsating vortex. So the Taoists believe that when we center our internal gaze down here, that we're fortifying and refining the qi, and we're calling it into the center of the body from the periphery so that it can better nourish the organs in the torso. Qi is said to be the spark of life, so very important to have it around our vital organs. So from there, we can gather and store some additional energy from the atmosphere immediately around the body. So on your next inhale, imagine that you're drawing up energy through the soles of your feet, up these imaginary straws in your legs. You can go over the knees and then pouring in like a reservoir into the lower abdomen, the hara. And then when you exhale, just keep your presence on the belly. So it's one directional. Inhale up through the legs, gathering in the belly. Stay there as you exhale. And do that a couple more times. And now the next time you inhale, imagine that the energy is coming down through a little doorway right at the center of the top of your head, down the spine, imaginary channel, pouring into the abdomen from above. Exhale there. So it's one directional. Inhale down. Stay there as you exhale. A couple more times like this. And now let go of the visualization and just stay with that belly-based presence as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply. And in this practice, unlike some other breathing practices you might have experienced in yoga classes, it's not necessary to draw out this inhalation and the exhalation a really long amount of time. It's whatever is a little bit longer than your natural breath that stays very, very manageable. We don't want to overdo it by stressing ourselves out by holding the breath when we really aren't capacitated. Well, just a little bit longer. My teacher says that when we overdo it, we undermine the work. I think that's true of a lot of things. About 2 more breaths. And you can let that go and just take a moment before we move around to notice what that was like for you to spend some time, that belly-based presence. Maybe you feel a little bit more relaxed. It might not be grand, a humongous shift, but it might be. You never know. Excuse me. It also might be true that some of that congestion that accumulates during the day up in the head, creating that tension in the layer of muscles around the scalp, has relaxed a little bit, and there's a sense of dropping down, settling in. The analogy we often use is looking for that sensation of sparkle settling at the base of a snow globe after you've stopped shaking it. So not moving is the not shaking, but we want to enhance the settling by focusing on the breath, especially in the belly. So go ahead and roll over to one side, and we will come up to stand. And I'll share a little bit of Qigong with you, which is part of the Taoist energetic health and wellness practices. So Qigong actually translates to energy exercise or Qi exercise. So that's what we're going to do today. Let me move this out of the way. So unlike a yoga practice, you're going to stand a little bit wider than hip distance apart, and you're going to bend your knees a little bit. I find it helpful to exaggerate the bend at first. So I don't have particularly flexible ankles, so some of you might actually be able to bend naturally more deeply than I can. But if I go to the edge of my personal ankle capacity, then it's a nice low bend. You also want to slightly tuck the tailbone under a little bit, and that's going to give you a very slight forward carriage of the upper body. So in yoga, we might stand up really tall and roll the shoulders back, but in Qigong, we're gonna bend the knees a little bit, let the tailbone drop, and there's a slight forward carriage, okay? We don't wanna overdo it, it's not wrong. We wanna just a little bit. Okay, roll my sleeve so you can see. All right, so we're gonna bring our hands back to the hara, and oftentimes what we'll do is we'll place the thumbs together right at the navel and then let the hands drop down. And I have seen it where some teachers will place the fingertips together and then you have a diamond shape here, and other times maybe the hands overlap. Okay, and then see if you can bring your presence back into the hara. And feel your breath expand out and back. Taoists would call this Buddha breathing. You'll notice that it's not as easy to breathe really full deep breaths when you're standing. Again, that's because the muscles are now engaged a little bit more to hold you upright. So you don't need to try and force it. Just allow what will naturally open up. And then start to move your hands outward from the belly. Fingertips are going to point a little bit down. The elbows are going to be higher than the wrists. We call this snowman pose or hugging a tree. And just kind of get a sense of where the belly presence was back here close to the body. Now we've expanded it outward from the body. And so you kind of feel a sense of energetic presence here in between the hands and the torso. And because our knees are not locked off and we've got our center of gravity down in the belly, we can start to circle a little bit. Kind of get a sense of this energy out in front of you. If you've been going in one direction, what's it like to switch and go the other way? And now we'll bring the elbows in close to the body and let the palms face one another about waist height. It's not high, it's, upper arms are very relaxed. Hands right out in front of you. And just start to get a sense of some energy bouncing, pulsing between the palms. And holding the left hand steady, start to move your right hand forward and around a few times. Usually do 6 circles in one direction. You can feel presence of energy between your hands. Like I often think of it as like toffee between my hands. And then go the other way. Same hand, we're starting with the right. About 6 times. And then pause that hand and switching to the left, it goes forward and around first. And then go the other way. Maintaining the softness through the knees and the slight tuck of the tailbone and even a little bit of that belly awareness, even though you're mostly focused on the hands. We'll pause and then start to move both hands. Maybe there's also a sense like you have rubber bands threaded between each of your fingers and you can kind of feel them playing off of one another as you move the hands. That's how I experience it. But you might feel something different. Let's go the other way. And then kind of pause the movement. Just kind of get a sense of how much you can space your hands apart. Kind of moving them apart and closer together again. I find that if I move too fast, too quickly, I might lose that connection. And if you do, just bring the hands back together and do this rotation movement again. This is called tiger plays with ball. I'm gonna go out again. I move my hands apart in increments. So there's almost a pulsing. Okay, we're gonna just kind of make a sweeping motion here, just to diffuse any tension from that exercise. And then another thing that I like to do in Qigong practices is bounce. So go ahead and pause and lean into one foot and shake out the other and the other foot, and then start bouncing. Shake the hands, and jump up and down, and take the arms out to the side, up overhead. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. And more progressive movement or more gentle movement, just a little bit. You do this about a minute a day. Not only will your energy body and your chi flow be very happy, but also it's very good for your soft tissues. Okay, let's inhale the arms out and up. And place hands one on top of the other. So you exhale down the central channel. One more time, 2 more times actually. This last time, bring your hands back to the hara. Let your breath settle. Okay. I hope that you feel grounded and also reinvigorated after these practices. My recommendation is to practice hara breathing. Maybe 5 minutes a day to begin, but if you can drop it in, periodic little droplets throughout your day, I think you'll find that your anxious energy will diffuse. Okay, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.